I can write linear equations. Folks, by the end of this lesson, or maybe hopefully by the end of tomorrow at least, we're all going to be able to say, hey, I can do this. I can write linear equations. In worst case scenario, I'll give you 2 days. I'll let it fester in your brain a little bit. Okay, so our first direction says write an equation in slope-intercept form that represents the given information. So what we're given here is going to help us write our equation. But first, please notice something. I added something, okay, something I left off the notes. In order to write an equation, you must have 2 things, okay? It's pretty simple. You need your slope and you need your y-intercept. And the reason, well, I think it's about to become pretty obvious. Let's take a gander back. Slope-intercept form looks like what? Hopefully you're talking it out now without my direction. Y equals mx plus b is the slope-intercept form of an equation. Well, if we're told that our slope is negative 1/4, can't we just plug that in here for m? You know what? I'm going to try something here. What if I move this to the middle? That way I can get to my colors faster. Okay, doesn't that mean we can just plug this guy in for m? Let's do it. Negative 1/4. And of course we still have y equals negative 1/4 x. And what is plus b? Since our y-intercept is negative 7, we just add in our negative 7. Some of you like to write it as a plus a negative 7. I prefer to write it as y equals negative 1/4 x minus 7. Okay, either way is correct. Doesn't matter. It's pretty simple, guys. If you know what slope-intercept form is, and you know the slope and you know the y-intercept, you just plug these values in for m and for b, and you have your equation. Okay? So here we are. Move this to the side a little bit so we can do number 2. Write an equation in slope-intercept form. Okay? We know our slope, we know our y-intercept. So y equals mx plus b says, hey, if I know my m, let me plug it in. And my m, my slope, is 2. So it's 2x. What is my y-intercept? It's b. So you can say 2x plus 0. But that's pretty worthless. You don't need this 0 right here. So normally we just say, we simplify things and we say y equals 2x would be this equation. Okay? So pretty simple. You're just plugging in your slope and your y-intercept. Let's jump down to number 3. It says same thing. Write an equation in slope-intercept form for the line graphed. This is a little more difficult because when you're looking at this, you don't know either of the 2 things that we need. We don't know the slope and we don't know the y-intercept. So if you don't know the 2 things that we need, we obviously have to find them. So let's start with the y-intercept because that's pretty easy. Where does our line cross the y-axis? Well, all the way up at positive 3. So there you go, you're halfway home. Now all we have to do is find our slope. Let's think back at how to do that. Choose one of your points. I'm going to choose this one and start here. How do I get from here to here? Well, I go down 1, 2, 1, 2. So that's a negative 2 since I went down. That's my rise, negative 2. And what's my run here? Starting here. Oh, I just ran a positive 2 because I went to the right. So my slope is negative 2 over 2, or better yet, it's just negative 1. Okay, now that we know our slope and we know our y-intercept, it's very easy to just say, hey, y equals mx plus b. Let me just plug in my m and my b. So y equals negative 1x plus 3. Once again, you don't have to write this 1 here. A lot of times you'll just see this written as y equals negative x plus 3. Okay, it's implied that there's a 1 right here because there's only one x. So, or in this case, there's negative 1x. So either one of these is correct. We're moving right along, so let's go on to number 4. Remember, you can always pause me if you need or rewind. Number 4 says use the table of values to write an equation in slope-intercept form. Okay, this example is going to force you to use some of your favorites. It's going to force you to use our favorite method of finding slope. Okay? And it's very easy, really, because you just have a bunch of points. You could graph them on a graph, I suppose, if you wanted to take the time and graph the points. Then you could do it the same way we did number 3. But that's not always handy. You don't always have a graph there, and you don't always want to draw it yourself. Okay? So it's very easy to find the slope using this formula. All you have to do is choose any two of your points. I'm just going to choose the first two. And you have to determine which ones are going to be x1, y1, and which one's going to be x2, y2. So pretty easy. I'm going to call our first point x1, y1, and call our second point x2, y2. Again, it does not matter which 2 points out of these 4 that you choose. You will still get the same slope. Okay? And since we have to find our slope, this is important here. So our slope, and I'll use black. Whoops. Okay, our slope, let's just plug in our values. So y2 happens to be 10, and our formula says minus, and y1 is 16, and then x2 happens to be negative 1, and our formula says minus, x1 is negative 2, so make sure you have the double negative there. That's very important. Don't lose those negative signs. But you guys are all thinking, well, Mr. Dudek, it's a double negative. Good. So it becomes a plus sign, an addition sign. And our slope, let's simplify it. 10 minus 16 is negative 6. And negative 1 plus 2 is 1. So our slope happens to be negative 6. Okay, but we still need our y-intercept. So guess what? This is really easy in this example because our y-intercept is given to us. If you were to graph this equation, you would notice 0, 4, if you were to graph it on a graph, is just 1, 2, 3, 4, is right here. Okay? That's our y-intercept. It gives us our y-intercept. So b is positive 4. So let's go ahead and write our equation. Hopefully you're already to this point. Y equals negative 6x plus 4. This is an equation that represents this data right here. If you put this data on a graph, you drew the line through it, it would look the same as if you took this equation and graphed it. Okay, all of these points lie on this line. Alright, last one. Better move this guy out of the way. We got a 4-step process going on here, okay? So this one will take us a minute. Okay, the owners of the Good Times Eatery surveyed their customers to find out where they lived. They learned that for each 5-mile radius from the restaurant, 30 fewer people visited them. That means the further away we get from the restaurant, people who live in that further away area are less likely to go visit that restaurant. It makes sense. They had 150 patrons in the area immediately surrounding the diner. Predict the number of customers who lived 20 miles away. So this is a couple-step process. Once again, hopefully you can use these steps that we're about to work through when you start working on your classwork tomorrow. Okay? In order to write a linear equation, we need a slope and a y-intercept. So let's start by finding our slope. And in order to find our slope, we need ordered pairs. So bear with me here. I'm going to actually create an XY table to give you guys a good visual here. We have 2 variables here. We have the radius that people live, the distance that people live away from the restaurant, and then you have the number of people. I'm going to represent the distance that people live from the restaurant. I'm going to represent that with x. Okay? Or each 5-mile radius I'm going to call our x values. So I'm saying that our first ordered pair is going to be 0, 150. Okay, so 0 is that first batch of people who lives within 5 miles of here, of the restaurant, and 150 is the number of people who live within that radius. So every 5 miles that you go out, so I'm going to go out 5 miles. Once you get to that 5 miles away, and you can imagine a circle being drawn around the restaurant, once you get out to 5 miles away, you get 30 fewer people who are going to visit from that area. So that means we're only going to get about 120 people from this area. I could keep going. I could say, hey, once you get to 10 miles out, you're going to have only 90 people show up. But I don't need to, because I can find my slope using two ordered pairs. So I'm going to say, y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1, because this is to find our slope, is going to equal, and I'm going to use this point right here. I'm going to use the first 2 points. So 120 is my y2, and maybe I'll write this out for you so you don't get confused. That's y2, that's x2. Okay? And this guy obviously then is going to be x1, and this guy's going to be y1. Remember, that's just the first point and the second point. Those numbers don't really mean a whole lot. So y2 is 120 minus y1, which is 150, divided by x2, which is 5, minus x1, which is 0. So you should have negative 30, divided by 5, which actually reduces to negative 6. So this is your slope, negative 6. Let's move on to step 2. Find the y-intercept, b. Guess what? Our y-intercept is already here. 0, 150, right there. So b equals 150. Always look, if you're given a table, always look and see if you were given the y-intercept. That'll make your life easy. Step 3, write the equation. You all know how to do this. Y equals negative 6x plus 150, because that is our slope and that is our y-intercept. The last thing we're asked to do, it says predict the number of customers who lived 20 miles away. We're going to talk about how to do this tomorrow in the warm-up. So you folks, unless you want to try it on your own, give it a shot, come in, we'll talk about it. Otherwise, we're going to talk about it tomorrow when you first walk in. Have a great night.